You are listening to Beyond the Verse, a Star Citizen podcast. A show dedicated to Cloud Imperium games, Star Citizen, and Squadron 42. Whether you fight, explore, unite, and/or trade, we bring you news, updates, interviews, reviews, and analysis. So sit back, relax, grab yourself a pour of Radegast, and join us as we go Beyond the Verse.
Launch sequence activated.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Beyond the Verse, Star Citizen podcast. I'm your host, Sulyce, and this is episode 80. We're talking CitizenCon and the retrospective thereof. We're going to be covering things like the news 324.2 in its current state and the hotfixes that are going into it, as well as 324.3 and the PTU. What does that mean for trying to get into the game to play before IAE? We're going to be reacting to news from the LTI updates to AI blades, and the latest news, or at least what's catching fire right now about the RSI Galaxy losing the capability to base build. But more importantly, we're here to reflect on everything that happened in CitizenCon 2954. And I've been using the word we because we're joined here today with a favorite of the show. You've been on here like 5 or 10 times now at this point, but my dear friend, Space Tomato. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Yeah, it turns out I actually like to talk about Star Citizen a little bit, so love to join you. Yeah, it's good times.
It is. It's always a really good conversation, and I really wanted to prioritize you on this show because I think you're a phenomenal balance between a critical eye, but kind of an optimistic outlook on what the future has. So I think this is going to be a really good conversation to dive into everything. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I can confirm I get called a hater and a shill in the same comment section of videos, so I think that means I must be at least kind of leaning in both directions. But I enjoy talking about the game, and obviously it's Star Citizen. There's a lot of both positives and negatives when it comes to building a game, especially one that's taken this long. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, welcome in, and I would love, again, the initial intent or the purpose of the show was, hey, how'd it go, buddy? Let's sit down and chat about this last weekend. But
we had the plan.
Yeah.
And CIG was like, here's a wrench.
Yes. So I think we talk about that first. I think we get the elephant in the room. We call it out and we talk about it. But right now, if you go onto social media, there is a firestorm, and I want to highlight it. I want to talk about kind of where it came from, and then I just want to open up the floodgates for your reactions there, and let's figure out what it means for the rest of 2025. Sure. So there we were. All right, during CitizenCon, not to get ahead of ourselves, but they announced the release of the MISC Star Lancer BLD. And this ship is going to be the building variant of the Star Lancer, and it's going to be able to build large infrastructure. And that generated this, interesting. We've got another ship in the game that can do this. The RSI Galaxy. So fast forward, I'm going to say to today, because it didn't get on my radar until today, but I noticed today that CIG, I'm going to go and share my screen for those of you on YouTube and watching the video over on Spotify. CIG confirmed that the RSI Galaxy, though briefed in 2953, so last year's CitizenCon, the RSI Galaxy will not be a base builder. So just quickly, I'm going to read it, and then I would love to hear reactions. But straight to the horse's mouth. From John Crew. We'd planned to talk more about this at IAE, but a lot of people are discussing this very topic at the moment, so want to add some clarification in advance. There are no current plans to have base building module for the Galaxy. That doesn't mean there never will be, but there is nothing concepted, planned, or in the production schedule. The Star Lancer BLD will be the ship you can build large structures with when base building is available in-game. The only confirmed module, in addition to the ones in the pledge store, is the manufacturing module. The general rule of thumb for all things vehicle, this kind of hit a little hard, I think, when I read this initially. The general rule of thumb for all things vehicle is unless it's on the pledge store or available in-game, treat it as speculative. So I'm thinking we should look at all of CitizenCon. I think the whole thing is speculative now.
Yeah, that's not...
That's whoops. And then the last piece, the Perseus this was kind of cool, I guess. The Perseus is the next RSI capital ship in production instead of the Galaxy, purely because they're shared assets with the Polaris. So he says hope that clears things up, but Space Tomato, did that clear things up?
I mean, yeah, I guess it clears things up. It's not the answer I think a lot of people want to hear. Yeah. Like you said, this sort of came about because everybody was expecting to hear about the Galaxy during the panel. Like, that was one of the big predictions, right? Is that, they're talking about the tools of industry. The Galaxy was just shown last year. It is something that they've kind of hinted at being worked on after the Polaris, in line with the Perseus, or I think it was the Polaris, Perseus, and Galaxy, where people were looking forward to. And then it also was suspected, per the panel from last year's CitizenCon, to be something that was also going to work in base building. Just literally from I think it was called Destination Adventure. Yeah. Todd Pappy was on board. He was talking about the ground vehicles, the Galaxy and the Pioneer, and what things they could build, and said out there that the Galaxy can build these kinds of things. And now John is saying, if it's not in the pledge store or in game, it is speculative, which in terms of ships is a statement. That's a statement. That's yep. I mean, my general advice to people is don't buy ships. Like, buy ships if you want to fund development. Buy a ship to get into the game, something for like a general purpose sort of everyday thing. Don't rely on stats. Yeah. And at this point now, I'm going to say, like, don't really rely on the roles they tell you, because if it's not in the pledge store specifically, and they've maybe only talked about it at a CitizenCon or something, then you shouldn't really be trusting that as saying what it is, because that's a high up person in the company who came out on stage and said this statement. Yeah. And now they're saying, hey, that's not true. I feel like that's kind of throwing him under the bus instead of just like sticking to what he said and trying to make it work.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me curious about, really going into IAE, which is arguably the most procurement or most purchases that happen for the whole year is IAE. But that logic, I agree with you wholeheartedly. But that logic, what do you spend your money on? Like, I'm like fearful to get into the Idris, the Kraken. Like, the Kraken has modules for the privateer, has modules for the merchant loop. Okay, well, you can't really rely on that, and I think this is a hard-hitting fact.
Unless it's on the pledge store. Is the Kraken's privateer modules, is that on the pledge store? Because it sounds like basically saying, if you spend money on it, then we're accountable for it. If you don't and we just said it, then don't listen to what we're saying.
It's a very blurry line, though, because theoretically the Galaxy was on the pledge store. Now there wasn't. I don't think there was a base.
I don't think they ever module. They never had the base building module. Yeah, they had a manufacturing one, which it sounds like he's saying they're sticking with, so it can do crafting. Yeah, but not base building. Yeah, is that what you're getting from that?
Yeah. Man, okay. So what's the conclusion to all this? Like, what happens? What happens from here? What needs to happen?
Don't buy ships based on things that might happen to them. So on one hand, I hear you, right? If it's not on the pledge store, don't buy a ship for it, because that doesn't mean that we're actually hold accountable for that. Yeah. We haven't sold something that means that we have to deliver that something. Yeah. If they came out and they said, oh yeah, the Terrapin, here's a good example. There's a long time ago, if you go into the Q&A of, I believe it's the Terrapin, it might be another ship, but I think it's the Terrapin, and they talk about utility mounts, and they say, these ships have items like the Terrapin scanner that is a utility mount. This is something that you could exchange for different types of utilities, like a mining laser or a tractor beam or something. Now, that's not something they've sold on the pledge store. So from this kind of development, I would say, hey, this is something that I've always said might be a possibility for something like the Terrapin. It could bring a lot of functionality to a ship like the Terrapin. But now, if they've never sold anything that supports that, I'm not going to say it anymore, right?
Yeah.
You can't really trust that. And that's kind of what's happening here with the Galaxy. They never put that module on the store, so they don't need to be held accountable to that module, even though they talked about it at CitizenCon. And that's not great. That's not good. Like, in my mind, they need to be a lot more careful about talking about gameplay before they've written that code down and understand how it works. And that's a big statement because this game has been built and funded on that idea. True. Engineering and multi-crew ships have carried this game's funding, and we're not getting engineering until just this year.
Right.
But they now we are in a much more serious time than we were before, and it has been continuously getting more and more into, I think, a kind of dangerous place where they need to be able to match what they're saying.
Sure.
And I think we're past the point where they can be making promises on stuff they don't know they can do.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Let me refrain. Not promises, statements.
Yeah.
I'm going to say he made a promise or anything, but he did state it pretty clearly on stage.
Yeah, I mean, there's a slide. There's a slide that's being circulated. You've shared it, but there's a slide that's like the RSI Galaxy. It'll build from small to large structures.
Yeah, it's there.
So in my conclusion, it makes me look at the second day of this CitizenCon that was all about base building, like the space station and up in space, and it just makes me doubtful now, and that's so depressing. Like I am recording with the sole provision officers on Sunday, all things org related, like for an episode. I have to do it in speculation now. I have to do it in a lens that is almost like not trusting, because again, it's not in the pledge store, to your point. So how much of that can we actually like expect and lean into and be excited about?
It's and that's, I don't think that's being negative. I think that's just like, that's psychology, man. If something like this happens, you suddenly start to wonder about other things that are maybe in a similar state. And one of the best parts about a Star Citizen 1.0 panel specifically is just having an actual roadmap to what they think this game is going to be. Yeah. We haven't really had that all in one place before, and now they've done it. And within a week of telling us that, they've now said, well, if something's not on the pledge store, it might not happen. And it's like, okay, well, how many of the things in that panel were on the pledge store? Like, what is the rule that people are supposed to abide by to actually set their expectations?
Yeah. What are your thoughts, everybody? Leave a comment in the YouTube section. I know you will anyways. Leave a comment in the YouTube section and on Spotify for the comments for the Q&A piece. Yeah, I can't wait to hear everybody's thoughts, as we will over on Twitter and all other social media. So, oh my goodness, let's pivot. Let's pivot to this week in Star Citizen. I'm not going to go through the bullet points. Of course, it was a very, very light week post CitizenCon, but we do have. I don't know. Let's stay with a little bit of a critical tone, and then we will get positive. I promise. We'll transition to positive in CitizenCon, but right now it is what it is, guys. There's a live PU that's on fire, and there's a 324.3 PTU that's on fire. So, Keenan, have you been able to jump in game at all since the
Dude,
event?
no, I haven't played the game in weeks, to be honest. We're getting ready to move. It's just been a lot of content to do. I have not been able to play anything.
Yeah.
Except for a little bit of Civ. It's always time for Civ.
Always. Well, unfortunately, you're not missing much. It is. I would not go as far to say 318. I would not go as far because you can actually get into the game for the most part. But it is almost impossible to do anything right now in the live PU. I'm sharing my screen. I'm showing the second hotfix that is live that you can currently log into, and it's better, right? It's better. But last night, my org's intention was to do a murder mystery aboard an 890 jump. We had the whole thing planned. Keenan, I'm not kidding with you. There's PDFs. They went like over and above on this event.
Wow.
And we canceled it. We postponed it for a different week because you can't do anything in the game right now. So just to bring it to the listeners, the viewers, if you're curious about the current state of the live PU, again, you can read on the screen the hotfix 2 that went through, but it's not a good time to be getting into Star Citizen. I would wait until closer to IAE personally, but here are the hotfixes. Quickly, let's just stay on this topic for the PTU. We do have a patch notes for 324.3, and this is nothing really different. It's the same exact experience, just on the back end, it's the IAE build. So the signage, all the decorations, but the Expo Center is not there, and obviously the ships are not there as well. What's your advice, Keenan? When should people be getting into Star Citizen? Is now a good time? Is the Free Fly event in IAE the right time, or should we advise later?
It all depends on who everybody is. I mean, if you play this game maybe once a quarter, then no, I wouldn't make this time your moment. Yeah. But maybe during IAE, yeah. They're getting this out now so that they can kind of stabilize a bit before that event comes up. But then there's a free fly that's going on, and free flies generally take performance regardless of what's going on. If it's been years and you are the kind of person who's been like watching and waiting for a time to get in, I would say don't even try it till next year. Give server meshing a chance to get in game and be stabilized, because 4.0 will likely be a little bit rough too. That being said, whatever it is that's going on with the game right now is clearly something that's not related to 324, because we got 324, we got 24.1, now we're on 24.2. And the big difference is that we're on the 4.0 code branch. So it could be that what we're experiencing now is a godsend, because it could have been what we were experiencing when 4.0 came out.
Yeah.
And that is a very, very key point. And we'll have to see how this all shapes out. But that could be a very key point of them having moved the code branch into the 4.0 sort of branch rather than staying with 324, because now they're able to figure these types of things out before 4.0 even goes live.
Yeah, I hope you're right. I absolutely hope you're right.
So do I.
Yeah, well, I think we all do. What I'm hoping is happening, and I know CIG can walk and chew gum at the same time. Now they might be chirping along the way, but they're still walking and chewing gum.
Step in the gum a little bit,
yeah. Getting in their hair, it's rough at times, but I hope this means that they're doing all their work on 4.0. That's why 324.2 and .3 are kind of broken right now, because they're like, you know what, let's just get 4.0 right, and then once we load 4.0, we didn't have to fix the 324.2 or 324.3 in the meantime. So I kind of hope they're putting all their assets, to your point, kind of merging points. I hope they're putting all their assets into 4.0 to get that crap out the door. However, they're not launching 4.0 until after IAE. So Is this like a whole month of a dumpster fire? I sure hope not.
I mean, yeah, I think we have no clue or insight into what the problem could be right now. It sounds like it started late last week. And I don't know if there was something that they did at that time. All eyes were really on CitizenCon, and this started to kind of happen in the background. And it has been a persistent problem, I think longer than most people would expect. So who knows what the problem is? But I would say if this isn't figured out by IAE, it's not good. That is very, very, very bad.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And just a little bit of an ADD moment. I actually do have the image here of the slide. So those of you who are, again, watching on YouTube, watching on Spotify, here you go. This is the slide from 2953, or the CitizenCon 2953, the RSI literally saying the Galaxy supports the ability to build small to large structures.
Yeah, this is what everybody was thinking about going into the CitizenCon. There was so much excitement, because a lot of people bought the Galaxy. A lot of people got it. It's a cool looking ship. It's a newer concept. It's got a lot of potential with its modular design, and it was able to build bases. Like that. Yeah. That slide showed us these ships that were poised to build bases. The Pioneer is a given. Everybody expects that. The ground vehicle, nobody even knows what it is because it hasn't been released yet. Right. The small thing over there is the mule. We all know what the mule is. And then that little thing that you can like carry that hovers around, we all assumed would be something that we'd get eventually. Mm-hmm. But the big thing that was actually achievable for most players, because the Pioneer's freaking huge, was the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And now it's gone. And it's just terrible timing because, like you said, the Starlancer build is coming out. And I personally don't think that they are like cutting the functionality of the Galaxy in order to push the build and make people buy that. I think this is genuinely like they did not know how the design of base building worked well enough for it to be planned with the Galaxy in mind. Yeah. The Pioneer, we've seen the big restructure, the whole redesign that it got because it was having the same problem. But the Pioneer is a must. It has no other use.
Yeah.
So they had to redesign that in order to fit drones, and it's a huge ship, so it can. The Galaxy, though, has other uses. It's built on other sort of expectations. It has other functions, and it's a smaller ship, so it's not as easy for them, I think, to redesign for these drones. And they've decided sometime in the last year that drones are the way to do all of the base building. Yeah. And it's such a big mistake for them to try and talk about specific gameplay like this without having the design and the code for that design set down in stone to make sure it's doable.
Yeah, I agree. And again, sorry for the ADD moment. We pivoted like back and forth, but I saw the image, so I wanted to share. But back to CitizenCon, I think it somewhat is a good transition regardless. Let's get into CitizenCon, can we? Like,
yeah, yeah. With all that positivity behind us, let's go.
Yeah, let's change this up a little bit. As a host, I get to do that. So, all right. So we also have a giveaway. We have a giveaway at the end of this episode. So stay tuned for your chance to win. And you've already entered, but your chance to win a Nomad or the Cutter. But part of my entry required you to answer a question: which segments at CitizenCon 2954 were your favorite? And so I thought this would be a good slide to kick us off, Keenan. So of all the days, the first day and the second day, we got Brave New Worlds, A Social Universe, Cosplay Contest, Dress to Kill, Beyond Pyro, Redacted, Crafting Your Home, Captains of Industry, and The Star's My Destination. That's the 1.0 release. Here are your results. You can see them, obviously, if you're on YouTube or on Spotify, but if you're just listening, coming in first place was the second day, the first segment, Crafting Your Home, at 59.3% of the vote. We'll just do the top three. And second was the first day, first segment, Brave New Worlds, which was the tech segment, at 54.1%. And then the third was the very last segment. I think this one was pretty obvious, but The Star's My Destination 1.0 at 53.3%. Just a quick reaction, and then I would love to hear Keenan's responses, but I'm really surprised that in second place was the tech segment. Like that to me was interesting because we kind of already know about the tech, and they just introduced like the new biomes. Again, great presentation, not trying to knock it, but I'm interested to hear what your thoughts were for basically the entire event with this slide in the background, Keenan.
I will agree with you. I also think the Brave New Worlds panel coming in at second is interesting. I can see why. The weather demo was very cool and something that we've been waiting a long time for. And the new biomes, specifically the swamps, I think is something that people have been really excited for, kind of low key. But I'm surprised that came in above the ships panel, which is actually very low here, or the Star Citizen 1.0 panel. The base building one makes sense to me. Yeah. And I think a big part of what makes people like that is if it didn't include the gameplay segments there, the gray box showcases, I think that would have been lower. Because overall, the first day was not filled with very much tangible gameplay. I think specifically, and if you don't include the cosplay contest, which, hey, 13 people cosplay was your favorite part, I'm happy for you. I'm glad that that's included for you. But the lowest ranked sort of game focused panel was Dress to Kill.
Yeah. And
I know that Jared, I think, brought up that like the person who was supposed to present it, something happened and they weren't able to make it. So I think it was Nick Pierce came on and filled the gap with just like a week's time. Huge shout out to that. That's not easy to do, especially with a presentation that big.
Yeah, no
kidding. But the score, the ranking that panel gets kind of shows that in a situation like that where they're talking about character customization and how character armor and clothes works and all that stuff, gameplay is really going to make a big difference. And I don't think that panel was anywhere near what it should have been gameplay wise, in-game presentation wise. What we saw from base building, we should have, I think, seen in that dress to kill panel. We should have seen that armor or clothing in the game had in-game statistics that they could show us with an in-game UI. But instead it was all just kind of concept panels and little snippets of video to sort of bring some more livelihood to the panel overall. But I think that panel really fell short compared to what people would expect from a topic that they're really touching on for the second time after they brought it up in 2019.
Yeah.
So I get that. But going back to the Brave New Worlds panel, that one's, I think that one still kind of surprises me. I mean, there's a lot of useful stuff there. Optimization of the game is really key. It's really important. Yeah. The Starchitect initiative, putting star before everything.
Stars everything.
They should just call this StarCon. I don't even understand. Just change the name of the game, huh?
Right.
Oh, I guess it is Star Citizen. Never mind. You guys are good on names.
What a great idea.
So the Starchitect is very cool because points of interest are a huge thing for this game and any game like it. Any single space game you ever look at, you tell people however many planets there are, or even just that there's one planet, and the first thing people are going to go say is, yeah, all these planets, but what is there to do on them? And it's the points of interest that matter. It's the places you can find, you can go, you can meet people, you can get loot and interact with the environment that matter. And that panel did have a really key segment in this whole CitizenCon and Starchitect, and that is making sure that this big freaking huge world of planets and space stations and all this stuff actually have things going on. So I can see like how the bits and pieces of that panel would lead to multiple people from different sort of interest groups in Star Citizen calling it their favorite. But I'm also surprised the Squadron 42 one wasn't ranked higher.
Yeah, about Squadron 42. We'll get there eventually. But that's, man, what a presentation. Kind of want to like, I want to tease my reactions to it though. But like, regardless of the two crashes, what a phenomenal presentation. I don't know. Pretty
cool game.
Yeah.
Pretty cool so far.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be great, and there's like a mix between too much story, not enough gameplay. It was the prologue to a 3-chapter series of games.
One of my community members did the math, and there is about a minute more gameplay than there is cinematic.
Oh, interesting.
So it's not actually more cinematic than gameplay, but it is close, and I don't think that's a bad thing, to be honest. I think it just depends on what kind of game you're looking for.
Yeah.
There are quite a few games that focus more on like cinematics and presentation, and then there are games that don't have any cinematics.
Yeah. I'm actually a firm believer of like a solo game needs to be heavily story driven, right? Because it's you by yourself. I'm thinking like Red Dead Redemption 2. There's plenty of narrative, plenty of story that drives kind of why you're there and why you're playing. The gameplay for me is in Star Citizen. Like, let me do the arcade-ish, like go through and, room to room in Squadron 42. But I want that Mark Hamill experience. I want that, I want that story. For me, I don't necessarily care. Make it 80-20. Make it 80% story, 20% gameplay. If I want to go play the game, I can also switch over and go play it in Star Citizen. So,
yeah, the argument is how you tell that story, because you can take people out of it and show them everything, or you can set up a more cinematic feeling and still let them have control of their character and what they're doing. And I think Star Citizen, from what we saw last year during the I Held the Line trailer, we do see that a lot of it is still quite cinematic, even when you're controlling your character. I think that even comes through during like that 0G moment. Everything's still going on around you. You understand there's a battle going on. You understand your ship's falling apart, but you still have control. Yeah. So there's like various degrees of quote unquote cinematic design and storytelling they could hit.
Yeah, that's very fair. I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking The Last of Us. The Last of Us is told basically through playing the game, and that was one of the best stories in gaming, in my opinion. So,
yeah,
You're onto something. I want to go back to the agenda and kind of iron out maybe like a structure to the next couple minutes where you and I talk. We already talked about Brave New Worlds, the tech piece. I want to go into social universe. Now, for me and my org, this was very important because communication sucks in the game right now. There's things that we wish we had, but I would love to hear how you felt about the introduction of kill lists and block lists and how to party up and the different features that come with this. And really, how does your org feel about this as well? But what were y'all's reactions?
Dude, I was elated. I was practically foaming at the mouth. Like this stuff, the amount of trouble that we've gone through to try and replicate some of the things that they introduce here within Discord with our own website is...
You gotta love technology. Welcome back, buddy. As you're struggling to keep your technology up and going over there, welcome back, and let's pick it back up. You okay?
Yeah. Talking about org stuff, right?
Oh yeah. Gotta love it. Org stuff. Let's go back to you and your org's reaction to the tech that is behind the future of how orgs will react into the game.
So the social panel overall was a just amazing time. I was elated. My org was through the roof. It's just great to see a lot of the things that you have to go outside of the game to do come into the game. I think one of my biggest criticisms of Star Citizen over time has been so many of the things that you want to do in this game, whether it is finding out about events that are going on, like CIG, Star Citizen official events going on, finding a guide to help you through the game, finding tutorials, learning about lore, almost anything that has to do with this game takes you out of the game to do. You have to go to the website. And so what I'm seeing with this app is now they're starting to bring these things actually into the game, from friend requests to communications to org features to finding out about events to running calendars. And the calendar thing is one of the best things I've ever seen, man, because trying to maintain an event list in Discord where there is no calendar still, like Gilded had this 3-4 years ago, and Discord still does not have the ability to set up a calendar that everybody can see. Having this in the game is freaking great.
Absolutely
and the functionality that we can get from this kind of stuff all in one app together is amazing. And that kind of factors into how reputation works and how you can be aligned with factions. And one of our big things as an org is that we've been non-consensual PvP has been cut off. Like, you can't really do that in our org, but you can take part in piracy as long as it's not impacting players, because the most important thing for us is that people know that GII is like a safe place for gameplay. You know, you can see GII there, and you can know they're not going to just attack you. NPCs, we don't care. Sorry, robot overlords, if you're watching this a couple decades down the line, but we don't care about them. We can kill them, we can rob them, we can do whatever. Yeah. But now this is starting to introduce that idea that maybe you can't, and you have to pay more attention to your overall alignment in the verse. And while that can limit people based on which character they're playing as or which org they're representing, it builds more consequence, it builds more of a reality inside of the game that I think adds to your own personality and your own sort of notoriety.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been trying to find. I was screenshotting the crap out of this event, so I'm trying to find like the images as you're talking. But I just showed y'all the calendar. This is what you're talking about for like a block and hostile list. And I love the integration into the user interface. So like friendlies will be, I think it's like blue and green. Enemies will be red and orange depending on the status, but letting you set those up. The talk about how orgs can wage war against other orgs. You know, like this is a friendly org, like GII and Soul Provision can align themselves as friendly orgs, and then be like their org whenever they show up on our UIs are colored in a certain way. It opened up the doors. And for me as an org leader, you as your org leader, I'm sure you just went like nuts about this, like the ability to set your schedule, like you were saying, the calendar, being able to live and breathe inside of the game. I've said it before a million times. I just want to exist in this game. I hate alt tabbing. I hate having to go to a different screen in order to see like what my team is supposed to be doing tonight, or anything along those lines. This puts it all into your user interface 100%.
Yeah, and even just something as simple as that, like the kind of hyperlinks inside of chat that take you to destinations is like starting to trickle in a little bit of like data running type of gameplay, and being able to more easily modularize your overall social experience in an MMO, which is a social type of game, is incredibly important. The one thing that I'm bummed out about is just that it was all concept. Like none of this was functional UI, and that just sucks. And it's not in the pledge store, so do we know if it's actually
Yeah, that's right. It's speculative. Come on, it's on the pledge store.
But I do wish that we had gotten to see some of this working quite a bit, like we saw some of the Imobiglass stuff last CitizenCon working when they were showing it off.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot to get excited about. And like you see in this poll that I asked, I mean, 71% said highly favorable. They enjoyed it, right?
What's unfavorable about it?
Like the 1.6%?
don't like that there are groups, maybe?
I don't even know. Like even if you're a pirate, I'll go as far as to say even if you're a griefer, don't you want to know what you're killing and who you're griefing? Like what? Like there's no bad side to this, in my opinion.
It's better chat, better VoIP, the ability to see official events in game, the ability to get reputation with factions. I'd be interested in seeing the comments below, like what would be an unfavorable view of that panel.
Yeah, it was one of the safe panels. It was one of those like you can't get that wrong, in my opinion. Any sort of update would be nice because it sucks right now.
Maybe it's like I was saying, because it's all conceptual and it's not like actual functional stuff.
Yeah, but that was kind of the general theme of the entire CitizenCon. Not to summarize it up in one sentence, but I think the pendulum swung entirely in 2023. Good Lord, I'm getting dates all confused. 2953, 2023, they had all the promises. This was going to release at this time in Q2 and Q3 and Pyro in those summer, and like they announced all the things in last CitizenCon. This one, I feel like they didn't commit to anything, like other than Squadron 42 being in 2026.
They learned their lesson, and it's a lose-lose. They could they could say things, and then people would say, well, we don't believe you. Why would you say that? And then they could not say things, and people were like, but when?
Right.
Exactly. And that's a product of their own doing over the years of just not meeting the goals that they've set out. And it's probably safer for them to just not put any sort of timeline on it. But from whispers and murmurs I've heard, a lot of it is pretty well underway. Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of want to do a little fast forwarding. I would love to talk to you about the Redacted. So your reactions to Squadron 42, which we basically already discussed, but I would love to hit that quickly and then get into base building and wrapping it up with 1.0. So let's talk Squadron 42. First off, the facts. It was about an hour and a half presentation with 2 crashes. I don't know. Let's start there. How do you feel about the 2 crashes? Did they mean anything to you? That the game's not ready. If it had crashed like that and they were like, yeah, it's coming out Q1 next year, I'd be like, oh, pump the brakes. Hold on. Like, it makes sense that it's still a year plus out, and they've had a couple of crashes. I thought it was funny that Chris was like, it's the computer. It's the computer. What's going on? It's like, yeah, guys, it's never done this before. It's totally the computer. I mean, it could be any number of things, but I don't know. Just crashes happen. We see it happen on fully released games too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I kept cringing like at the end of the day, and even the next day, Chris Roberts continued to like comment on the crashes, and I'm like, buddy, just stop talking about it. Like,
it's okay.
Like no one. In fact, here, share my screen. I over 12,500 impressions. Like this post kind of went viral, I guess. But I said there'll be 2 different types of Star Citizen backers. Like one that watched and it was amazing and they're going to love it regardless, but then others that just saw the 2 crashes and said, the project's broken. It's never going to happen. Right? Like, and you saw that on social media, just polarizing. And unfortunately, when you're Chris Roberts and you keep bringing it up, Like, it would have been better, in my opinion, it would have been better had he just been like, well, technology happens, and just kind of laughed it off and like, wouldn't be Star Citizen if that, like, he could have played into it, but he kept on blaming the tech, blaming all these other outside, sources, and but we played it perfectly a couple hours ago. Like, buddy, just drop it, man. Like,
it was also kind of like he went on stage and called Rich Tyre out live for the crashes, and like, dude, there is a reason that, like, all respect due, there is a reason that you're not on the stage for these moments anymore. And like, just let Rich get through it and figure it out. Can you imagine how nervous Rich must have been playing that and then having it crash and be like, oh crap, I need to get this back going. And then you got your boss coming out there and being like, what's going on? Why did it's not supposed to do this? It didn't do this for me.
Yeah. Like, why are you failing?
give him a moment.
That's right. We already talked about your reactions. We already talked about the overall cinematics and just the way it played out, set the story, in my opinion. Is there anything else you want to add to that before I ask the question about Squadron 42?
I think for somebody who's into Star Citizen and Squadron, it looks like a fantastic time. Yeah. It looks like something that's really exciting and something to look forward to. For somebody who's not at all into the game, I think there's definitely still something to be excited about. But there's still something to prove, I think, in terms of unique gameplay. A turret segment, it can be cool, it can be good. I think that there were some things that needed to improve there. The FPS gameplay, I think, was decent. But I think the main things that hit were the cinematics, and there is room for them to make the gameplay really stand out too. Make the unarmed section maybe a little bit more of a stealthy, high tension segment where you can get attacked. Make the 0G segment maybe one where you can see a couple other obvious paths through the debris, or at least like emphasize to us that there are those paths. Give people the sense that like the gameplay is also showing up, because I've seen a couple people say things like, oh, it's kind of like Halo CE's first level, and I can see some comparisons there, but it really takes some magic to land just like Halo 1 did when it first came out. And I'm not going to even humor the idea that this game will have a similar impact to that, because that was a different time in gaming and a different delivery. But they could have something really special on their hands, and I think depending on how they sell it to the average person, it could go one of two ways. For us, I think that was a pretty clear, successful presentation. Like, we saw essentially a slice of Star Citizen that was playing how it's supposed to, and it looked like fun, and it was telling a cool story, and the story is pretty gripping. Like, the setup is great. It brings you into the world. It brings you into the state of humanity, and it gets you excited to see, where is this all going to go? Are we stepping into a war? Am I going to go off and fight? Like, how do the pirates fit in? What happened to Vega? What happened to the city down there? We know they lost the battle in to some aspect. So like, where do things develop from here? And I think that's good that you can build that kind of that interest in people. But they've got another year plus to go, and I think that's a lot of time for them to really dive into some of the more interesting things for like what you would call a casual player.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And before I get to the question, I agree with everything you said. I liked, it was the most we ever saw the aliens, right? Like, in the last CitizenCon, they introduced like the Vanduls. They're crawling out of that ship, and I know we all wanted to see more of that, but this was it. This was an hour and a half worth of seeing them in cockpits, flying blades and glaives. It was really, I really appreciated that. And the FPS piece, it actually looks threatening. Like, the enemy looks like an actual combatant, like something that you'd be afraid of, not just an NPC to throw your bullets at. But it looked like, you might want to be careful. Like, you saw they were, as they were approaching or closing the distance, they were like twitching left and right to get closer to you. I'm like, and
they're fast.
I love it. Yeah, I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
The question though, what happened to your heart and your gut when you saw the final image of that 2026?
As the logo popped up, I was sitting there thinking, actually, I think I was saying it out loud on the stream. I was like, they're gonna drop a date. Are they gonna tell us a date? What's it gonna say? And then it said 2026, and like, I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, all right, yeah, I see.
Yeah.
A lot of people guessed that. A lot of people guessed further away than that. Like, there's all kinds of guesses for when this game is coming out, but nobody can really say. I think last year coming out and saying it's feature complete might have been a little bit premature in getting people's excitement up. I know it was kind of to get excitement up, and there's no like, yeah, feature complete can be 1 year for some studios, it can be 3 years for some studios, it could be 4 years for some studios, and whatever you think it is based on your feelings and your feelings alone. You get your own expectations up. But I do still think that like saying something definitive like that would set people on a shorter expectation than 3 years later kind of thing. And we don't know if it's 2026, like beginning of 2026, because it might have been delayed out of 2025 internally. We don't know if it's like, hey, we want to, GTA 6 might get delayed until spring 26, so we're going to go to fall 26 kind of thing, which would put it 3 years away from feature complete. Like, there's so many options for a whole year, and they probably did themselves some justice by at least not saying a quarter or something. But it was definitely like a kind of moment.
It's kind of deflating, right? Because like you had go ahead.
Well, and I'm totally taking the piss here. People don't get mad at me, but like Squadron 42 is not on the pledge store, man. So can we trust it? That joke's gonna keep on giving.
Yeah. Man, we're in trouble because that's gonna be the baseline of everything now. I this one's tough for me to swallow because last CitizenCon, when they said entering polishing phase. Now, my experience in gaming studios, it doesn't go beyond Amazon Gaming Studios, like AGS. And in our experience, it's year and a half to polish something. That's a AAA. That's a AAA studio. About a year and a half. And so when they release that they have already entered past tense, they've already entered polishing phase, man, it was very feasible for it to be either the end of 2024 or 2025 at the latest. And so seeing that 2026, exact same thing. Like, we watched 6 hours worth of like new tech, new pyro, new planet systems, all this like build up, and then like the thing that we were all waiting for was like 2 years away. Oh man, that was a gut punch.
And they ended the whole day with that too.
Yeah, they're like, have a good day, see y'all tomorrow. We're like, hold on, we have questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the joke on Reddit, and I'll never suggest anybody ever go to Reddit. It's a cesspool of emotions, but
I like Reddit. But yeah, it can be
it's a lot.
Quite extreme.
It's a lot. But it's like Squadron 42 is always 2 years away. Like, it's always been talked about in that way. It's like, we're 2 years out. Do you think it's
it is?
Do you think we're closer now, or actually 2 years out?
Oh yeah. I mean, like, the game's playable, and that being said, we don't know what is going on with the rest of the game, but just go back and look at the vertical slice in 2017.
Big difference.
I mean, in comparison, right, with hindsight, nobody's going to think that game was 2 years away from release. If this is what Squadron 42 looks like 2 years away from release, then that, right? But at that time, obviously, well, here's the thing. At the time that they put out that vertical slice, there was no intended release date. They said it was releasing in 2014, got delayed. Then they said it was releasing in 2016, got delayed. There was no release date posted after that. And that's, I think, something that people miss, is people think that it just kept getting kicked year after year after year after year. It wasn't until 2019 when they said that it would go into beta the next year, not even release, at which point that passed, and they still said, we're not going to put out a release date. So technically the last release date was 2016. And in 2017, we saw a vertical slice that like could have been anywhere in the development process. It looked good for the time, but it didn't, like, there were completely missing features like scanning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So now that they put something out like this, well, this is a little bit easier to understand. I mean, this is something that you can show to a regular gamer in the industry and they could be like, yeah, that looks like it's coming out next year. Because they've been able to develop it much better and cook on it much better than anything else they've ever shown us in the past. So I do think that we're closer. It's always possible that it could get delayed again for one reason or another. But I'm hopeful that, and I've heard this kind of talked about a little bit, 2025 was their intended release date, given the progress they made over the last few years, and they decided to push it back, whether to avoid other big games, GTA, or whether to give themselves a larger window to fix things that might be broken, because now they could be targeting January, but by the time, let's say, I think if it was coming out January or February, we'd know by like next September. Maybe they'd wait until CitizenCon to announce. But if they got to that point, they could still easily push it back to October that same year and not and save face, right? Because they didn't say anything. So I think they've done themselves a solid by giving them that whole year as a release possibility, and they should be able to polish it to spick and span by then.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's also like a marketing PR phase that this game has to go into. And so, we'll know absolutely with plenty of time. I'd probably say before CitizenCon of next year, because it's going to be about 6 months of pushing, potentially. So, yeah.
Got to get those Mark Hamill tweets out.
That's, okay, so funny note. I actually, I made like a tinfoil hat prediction in my org. I'm like, what if Mark Hamill walks across the stage and announces the release date? And so I was watching his Twitter. I was watching to see, where's Mark Hamill today? That didn't happen. So
yeah,
didn't
have
happen.
to wait another year for that.
Yeah, so like I did in the last segment conversation, this was the result of my vote, or my poll. What are your thoughts on the Squadron 42 playtest? So even with the 2 crashes, overwhelmingly, people voted it was highly favorable, 67.8%. That's across 273 votes. I mean, I think it's, if you're a fan of the game, which I think most people watching CitizenCon were, it's hard to not leave that excited, motivated, encouraged. So, base building, and I don't even know how to do the next couple minutes. I mean, there's so much information between base building, space stations, the org involvement, and then 1.0 is a whole nother ball game. So, I hate to do this to you, buddy, but base building, go.
Oh my God!
What are your thoughts? How did your org, how did the GII react for the 2 hours that was all about base building?
To be honest, a lot of our members don't actually know the full intended mission of the org as like a conglomerate. So GII, our org, was kind of made as a community where people could just understand that they could trust other people. You don't have to be involved in the internal org stuff. You just see the tag, you know it's somebody you can work with. But there's also like our main mission, and that is very dependent on setting up supply chains. It's dependent on setting up large farming initiatives, on being able to defend ourselves, and being able to set up locations where our members can go and like turn in items, commodities, and resources. So seeing this was like, it was just exciting for us as any other org out there that's salivating. No, this is great stuff, and I think one of the biggest things that we've seen here is the player shops, selling of items that you've crafted that have a unique nature to them outside of possibly anything else that's in the game. That feeds into the economy. It feeds into the viability of the Manu Merchantman, of the Kraken Privateer. It feeds into the possibility of progression, of end game content, of beginning game content. It feeds into exploration and data running and industrial functions. This is a huge driving force for the game outside of just your missions and your contracts and your reputation. So this panel goes, I think, so far beyond just what base building is. And it makes sense to have this right before Star Citizen 1.0 because this feeds a lot into that idea of 1.0.
Yeah. Yeah. What problems do you think are maybe some barriers? Because I'll just give one example. When I was watching this and they were like, theoretically, you could build an infinite number of bases, you as a solo player. Now it gets more expensive every time you buy a lot of land, so financially it would be impossible. But do you see like overcrowding? Do you see resources being like taken over where they're almost impossible to get? Do you see any barriers with the current proposal of base building?
Hypothetically, yeah.
Yeah.
But they're not stupid, right? They think about these kinds of problems well before we do.
Yeah.
And you, as a game designer, one of the responsibilities of being in that position is keeping in mind exploits. Not every exploit can be blocked, but keeping in mind the possibility that somebody will get a group of 2,000 people and lock down a resource so that nobody else can get it anywhere. And I think having some variability in where you can find those resources is a big part of it. Making sure that there are multiple locations that support the same kinds of gameplay. Making sure that you have high security resource deposits in Terra and in Stanton and in Castra. Making sure that you have star systems that are pretty empty but still kind of safe, like Nyx, minus the Vandal threat, coming out after 1.0, so that even if by 1.0 there's a lot of stuff going on, we're still starting at zero. It's not like people will have built spaces up for years at that point and they exist in 1.0 of the game. We're all going out for the first time when 1.0 drops. So if they can have another star system, 2 more star systems ready to go within the next year, and those are just empty places with planets and resources and stuff, that's very quickly opening up the game to continue that trend of expanding space. I can see problems with that. I can also see worries about cross shard bases. How does it work when you have a base here and it can be attacked in another shard, or maybe it can't be attacked in another shard? Can you squat on land in another shard, blocking players in another region of the world from building in that place just because you did? There's like a lot of considerations to be had there, but I think that's the kind of stuff that we'll learn more about in Star Citizen Live and Inside Star Citizen, and I would be very surprised if that's not things they're thinking about.
Oh, I'm sure they are. Yeah, 100%. On the other side of that token, like the things that y'all are excited about, the building the farms, the actual selling of it, the marketplaces, the defense of it, right there with you as well. But for us, I don't know, this is maybe low hanging fruit here, but when we saw logos on t-shirts and like logos on the sides of ships, we were like, yes, like Supervision logos everywhere. We can name our shops.
Yeah. See, I don't know, man. I feel like that's the kind of stuff where they like, that harkens back to like the Destination Adventure panel when I'm like, okay, you're putting this out there, but you're not saying any words about it.
Yeah.
It's not on the pledge store. Like, what is the customization that you're hinting at here? Yeah. Because customization in video games is a huge option, a huge potential for monetization, also huge potential for abuse. That's a very protected part of the game, and they're being pretty ambiguous about it still.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it too, though, because it's sick.
If it comes to fruition, absolutely. But I can absolutely see another side of the community, making profane and other images as their logos.
Yeah, dude. As soon as they're like, you can put your logo on a space station, everybody's like, okay, well, what's the first thing that's going to end up on the side of a space station?
It's like that Austin Powers skit. That looks like a flying Johnson. Right? Like,
I'd say I'm going to put my my sandworm on the space station.
That's right. All right. I'm a little kid. All right. I'm a little kid at heart. All right. I get it. But like when I saw the tattoo of the sandworm coming over, like on the guy's like face, I'm like, that's an interesting tattoo. It's very, very detailed. Yeah. I don't know if I would put that on my character, but anyways, I digress. When they sorry. Look, so let me back up. Before we talk about space stations, have you and your org already talked about where you're going to build? Are you going to have like a main base and maybe it's a housing or maybe it's the farming system? But have y'all talked and gone through some of y'all's decision making as an org yet?
We are waiting for Magnus. Okay. Magnus is...
That's y'all's
had
home,
my eye
right?
on that for years. Yeah, dude, that's got to be one of the most valuably placed systems in all of human space. And I don't take our home.
Retweet.
I know there's going to be a lot of people headed there. No, I'm really excited for Magnus, but that's not in 1.0. So we haven't really decided where we're going to be at 1.0. Like there's a lot of time to talk about that. Really, we're still trying to think about Stanton, but it is definitely like the way that orgs will have to be structured to make this work and also make them functional. You can't just give anybody responsibility over running a space station, like trying to structure a group of 1,000 people, let's say, to be able to run multiple bases and space stations, have them work in harmony, make sure that like things aren't getting out of hand. It's going to be a lot. And I'm glad that it's years away, because that's going to take a while to really get working like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's go in space. What were your reactions with space stations?
That caught me off guard.
Surprised you?
Yeah, they talked about it a little bit last year, and I was thinking, okay, that might be something they do at some point. Yeah. But then they're like, yeah, we got this stuff in gray box, and like it's moving along, and who knows really what like that gray box was. That was definitely done up a little bit for the marketing, but I am surprised that they're going so hard and on space stations so quickly. Yeah.
Now this is obviously tying into 1.0. This was actually during the 1.0 segment, but it's base building. This is unfortunately what we were alluding to at the beginning of the show. This is where it's not on the pledge store, right? This is my like unfortunate speculation now, where it's like, yeah, it looks great through a pre-production CGI rendered, presentation, but I have to doubt everything I see. But it looks amazing. I have all the questions in the world, right? Because you have an infinite locations in space you can put one. Or does it have to be tethered to a planet and distance or a home base on planet? Like what are the restrictions there? Because you could pick literally anywhere to put a space station if you wanted to. So I got questions there. But any reactions to the actual space station itself? Did you like what you saw? Any criticisms?
I think it's a great idea, because there are benefits to being in space versus on the planet. Yeah. There's a lot of ships that won't be going down to planets. Hull Cs are a very big one. Like having docking ports at Nix for a Hull C makes it different from any other landing zone in the game. The same will go for space stations. And it's just not something I figured Star Citizen would be. It makes sense entirely for a game like this, but like the amount of player-made content in the game with bases and space stations isn't something that I really expected to go to this great length. And I was very impressed with the whole idea of the space stations, really, that you could like expand it on the internal and external side. It does feel like they're very big, and there's no NPC crew. So can you really make something like this function with a small group of players, or is this more for just larger groups? Especially when you get into like the ship crafting. And I do think that there should be things that only large groups can do. Obviously, that's like scaling of gameplay.
Sure.
But if the smallest space station requires like 50 people to keep running efficiently, that might be a little bit of a crazy number. But like otherwise, it might feel like a ghost town. Yeah. What are those people who are like 20-player groups supposed to do? Are they just supposed to team up with other groups and then host a space station in an alliance? Is there something smaller that might be in the pipeline for them? Yeah. And then crafting bangles? What?
That was my next one. Yeah. I mean, so if you think about it, it takes how many people to run a javelin? Is it 80? 80 individuals. They say max crew of a javelin is like 80. So if the max crew of a javelin is an 80, bangles got to be hundreds and hundreds of individuals. So I'm thinking thousands in your org. There's probably a head count limit to building, in my opinion, of building a space station. Like your org has to have 1,000, 2,000 like people in it, unfortunately. Because again, to your point, I can't imagine 10 people in an org get up there and build a space station and it be what they wanted it to be. But the Bengal carrier, not really a surprise. We kind of knew you could craft from a couple years ago, but
not a Bengal though. Like up until now, they've been saying that you could find Bengals in the PU and then man them and kind of control them, but they'd never despawn. Now they're saying you can craft one, and I guess fly it around. And I'm just like, dude, what the heck are you even doing with a Bengal?
I know.
What is the game loop there?
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a big question that we had in our org. It's like, okay, so the Bengal's nice. Who wants to fly a Bengal? Like 1,000 people to fly it? No. So that
is absurd.
That'll be interesting. And then I guess to wrap us up, man, 1.0. Again, way too much to just say, have at it, Keenan. What are your thoughts? But unfortunately, that's where we're at. So what was your biggest takeaway with 1.0? Anything that you left there being like, yes, this is amazing. I'm super excited for 1.0.
Just the fact that there's a target. Nobody could really tell you what the vision for Star Citizen is going to be up until this presentation. Ever since Planetary Tech came in and the idea kind of shifted from a new version of Freelancer, I think there's been a lot of speculation of, is this a sandbox game? Is this a theme park game? Is this mostly about PvP? Is it PvE with PvP? How much is reputation really going to be the progression? Like a lot of people we didn't even really know there was going to be crafting to this extent up until now. We didn't know like what are the plans for star systems. All that kind of stuff is findable in different places across the last 10 years, but like who wants to go through all of that and find it?
Yeah.
Besides like a couple of us who are far too obsessed.
Yes.
Overall, I think it was just a really good idea that they got something down in physical form of where this game was going to go. Because even if they don't hit that, we can still now point back at this and be like, this is where you're supposed to be going. What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like we're doing with the Galaxy from last year's CitizenCon.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot more than what I expected them to present. And I don't know if that's good or bad. I've marinated on it for like the last couple of days, and I haven't really landed the plane on how I feel. It was a lot of information. I think they were trying to hit every type of player, and that was their marketing push. Is like, this Star Citizen is for every gamer, PvE, PvP, whatever you want to do, it's in this game. So yes, at the same time, it's a lot of layers, and you're looking at it on my screen. There's a lot of layers, and so when you explain like what is your elevator pitch, I love asking people when I first have them on my podcast, like what is your elevator pitch for Star Citizen? How would you explain it? And it's amazing to see how different people respond. Oh, well, it's this or it's that. Show them this image and ask them if they make sense. Oh, you're interested in Star Citizen? Well, this is what it is. It is so layered.
I think a big thing was the guilds and the factions within the guilds.
Yeah.
That combined with the idea of security and systems, I think are two main things that players really need to know about this game. Is that you're going to have different parts of the game that support different types of gameplay, and you're going to have different places that also cater to the different types of gameplay.
Yeah. Yeah, the guilds right here is what I was circling. Mercenary Guild, Interstellar, it's this inner circle here. But yeah, I kind of suspect there to be an issue where, you know what, I might be going heavy into one guild, into one play style, but you know what, today I want to do something completely different. I want to try piracy. I want to try and do something else. But if you don't have like the reputation built up with that guild, can you even play that? Right. So I don't know, like all these layers look great, but how much are gated? How much can you not get to?
You're investing into your character, and I think that's where the death mechanic really shines, but they didn't get too much into detail in that, and I think that was a miss. That they didn't explain more of that, because that is something that will also turn a lot of people off from it. Something though that they did kind of let slip earlier on, not slip, but they mentioned earlier on in the CitizenCon though, was that we would be able to have multiple characters.
Mm-hmm. And
I think that's a little less focused on in the aftermath of CitizenCon, but a really important part.
Yeah, I agree. Well, any last minute reactions? Like, where are you currently at You've had many of these conversations. I was looking at the last YouTube videos you made, and you've been on shows, you've hosted shows, you've had a lot of reactions to CitizenCon. How's your temperament, or how are you feeling about the overall project going in to IAE? Last thoughts.
I think we're still looking at the same old Star Citizen.
No.
But it's got more direction. We're still seeing, mistakes like what we're seeing with the Galaxy. We're still seeing some ambiguity with some of the design. And we're still seeing things talked about that aren't necessarily for sure coming anytime soon. It's not like this CitizenCon did not fix everything suddenly, right? It was, I think it was solid in a lot of ways, and I think it also left a lot to be desired. Even if a lot of my talks about it have been very positive since it happened, there's still a lot left to go over, to get into, to understand. And I think even Rich kind of acknowledged that they are still being actively lighter on information, because they do have information that they need to give during ISC and Star Citizen Live and all that stuff throughout the next year. One thing I think was amiss here is that CitizenCon, while it should give us an update on the long-term desire and design of different parts of this game, it should also be a sign of what's happening over the next year. And I don't think they gave players a very solid idea of what's happening over the next year. And I know once they do that, then every single month players are saying, well, you're not doing this, you only have this many months left, you're not delivering it, you're going to fail, blah, 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 all this stuff. And yeah, that's the case. They miss on things, but it's important still for people to understand, hey, what is your idea for like 5 years out from now? And what is your idea for 12 months out from now? Because it's fun to be hyped about stuff that's far away. But it's even more fun to be hyped about stuff that's like 3 to 4 months away. And some of that from CitizenCon may be 3 to 4 months away, but we don't know.
Yeah. What a great note to end on. No one knows about next year. It's very true, though. It's very, very true. Yeah.
They said a couple of things, but I think 4.0 comes out, and then what? Is like a big question. Yeah. What's happening after that? What could we even expect for 4.1 or 4.2?
Yeah. No, that's right. Well, as always, friend, thank you so much for being part of the show, as always.
Thanks for having me.
Probably third or fourth time here, but plug yourself. How can people find more of Space Tomato?
Oh gosh,
all the links.
There are several ways. Yeah, you search Space Tomato. The only other thing that's going to come up really is sometimes there's like some gardening videos, and then there's that tomato they found in space last year. But like you'll my YouTube video will probably pop up if you search Star Citizen stuff. Got a few YouTube channels. Space Tomato 2 is more podcasts and long form deep dives and really getting into like the nitty gritty of developments of this game and other games that interest me. It's more of like a talk show channel. Space Tomato Plays is our new gameplay channel, which is where I post like first impressions and just gameplay from Star Citizen and other games. And then I've got the Tomatoes. That's a channel that me and Mrs. Tomato are doing together that looks a little bit more at real life stuff. But I also stream on Twitch, post a podcast on Spotify and everything, couple podcasts, Citizen Central or Launch Sequence. I'm on Twitter, yapping about, and we're on Discord, having a good time. We got an org. It's good fun. You can see I've got this is our group right here. We're all a bunch of fruits and veggies for the garden. So yeah, plenty of ways to find me. Or you could just, watch me through the brilliance of this podcast every once in a while. And I'm happy to come on again.
Well, you're quite the enterprise. So thank you so much for being on, brother. Stay tuned. We're about to get into our giveaway, but we're going to let Space Tomato go. So again, until next time, thanks for being on, brother.
Of course, man. Thank you so much for having me. I will talk to you soon.
Absolutely. I absolutely love every time he is on this show. I hope you do as well. I respect his opinion, and I think he always comes with the history. He's been backing it for the whole 12-year program, essentially, but he always has a lot of information, but he's very, I think, well balanced. He likes to balance between being critical and having a more optimistic approach. But this episode, there was some things we had to get through, and unfortunately there's that Galaxy issue is going to be one that's going to ride for a while, unfortunately. But let's get into the giveaway. So as always, or as before, I am getting into this spreadsheet. I've done nothing but hide columns. You can see the names, the responses, and the number of entries they are in. So here we go. Equals rand number, enter. All right. So again, I have to copy that all the way down, Control C, Control V, paste as a text, and here we go. Drum roll. Make this filterable. Sort by largest to smallest, and we have our 2 winners. Oh shoot, troublemakers on our org. That's amazing. All right, so in first place we have Swaver_SC. Fantastic. So you are walking away with the Nomad, and Troublemaker, you are walking away with a Cutter. That's with lifetime insurance, and that is with the game package. So congratulations. Thank you all so much for being part of this giveaway. Thank you to CIG for making it possible. But here we go. Classic outro. If you want more, or if you want to become part of this conversation, you can do so by emailing us at contact@beyondtheversehq.com. Follow us at all socials /BTV_cast. And our YouTube replay is at /BTV_cast. You can join our in-game organization Sole Provision at www.robertspaceindustries.com /orgs/provision. I hope this finds everybody well, safe travels as you traverse beyond the verse. Take care, everybody.